All right, let's kick off another deep dive. Today we're going way back, back to 14th century South India.
Ooh, exciting times, right?
Yeah, tons of turmoil, but also the rise of a truly remarkable empire.
The Vijayanagara Empire.
A story of resilience.
Revival.
Yeah, the forging of a powerful Hindu state, and right in the face of invasions from the north.
So before we, dive into the whole rise of Vijayanagara itself, can you set the scene for us a little? Like, what was the political landscape in South India looking like before this empire, came to be?
Okay, so picture this. South India, 14th century, you've got like established powers, like the Hoysalas, the Kakatiyas, and Pandyas, each of them with their own territories and dynamics going on.
Right, right.
But then you've got the Delhi Sultanate, huge force in North India, but they're reaching southward.
They're expanding their reach.
Exactly. And this expansion, it created this real sense of urgency, anxiety among the different groups in the South. That makes sense. I mean, it must have felt like everything was changing really fast.
Oh, yeah.
So with all this uncertainty, how did this Vijayanagara Empire even, come into being? Who are the main players here?
Okay, so the founders, these were two brothers, Harihara and Bukka.
Okay.
And their story, well, it's a bit of a mystery, to be honest.
A little shrouded.
Yeah, but some sources, they suggest that they might have actually served the Delhi Sultanate themselves at one point.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. So they learned from the enemy, you could say?
Maybe. But, their motivations, well, they're still kind of debated.
Yeah.
Some scholars think that a sage, a scholar named Vidyaranya, might have influenced them.
Okay, so a mentor, a guide.
Right. Potentially.
Yeah.
He could have been the one who gave them the vision for this new independent, Hindu kingdom.
Okay, so ambition, maybe guidance, but then there's the question of location, right?
Yeah.
Where did they choose to set up their empire and why there? Was there a strategic reason?
Their choice of location, it was genius. They founded their capital city, also called Vijayanagar, right on the banks of the Tungabhadra River.
Ah, a river. Okay.
Yeah, and this location, it was crucial for a bunch of reasons. First, the river, it's a natural barrier, offered protection from invaders.
Makes sense, using the geography to their advantage.
Exactly. But it wasn't just about defense. The river was also great for trade. Connected Vijayanagar to all these important trade routes, kept goods and resources flowing.
And a reliable water source never hurts, right?
Never hurts, especially when you're building a city.
So strategic location, ambitious founders. What else helped the Vijayanagara Empire rise to power so quickly?
One of the biggest things, their ability to unify all these different groups under one shared identity.
Okay, so bring everyone together.
Right. And you got to remember, South India at that time, it was super diverse. A ton of different languages, cultures, religious practices.
Yeah, real melting pot.
And that's a lot of potential for conflict.
Definitely. So how'd they overcome those differences and create unity?
The Vijayanagara Empire, they embraced Hinduism as this unifying force. They positioned themselves as defenders of the Hindu faith, especially against, the Delhi Sultanate.
Right, but wasn't Hinduism itself pretty diverse back then? I mean, different sects and schools of thought.
You're right, it was. And it's interesting because they didn't impose a strict, like, one-size-fits-all kind of Hinduism.
Oh, so they were flexible.
Yeah, they embraced various sects. You had Vaishnavism, focusing on the worship of Vishnu, then Shaivism, centered on Shiva.
Okay, so kind of an umbrella approach.
Yeah, and that inclusivity, well, it was key to creating a shared identity, a shared purpose among all the different people in the empire.
So it was about finding something everyone could get behind, something that transcended their differences.
Exactly, and projecting that unity was really important, especially when dealing with those external threats.
Oh, for sure. Show a united front.
Yeah, that shared heritage became a source of strength, helped them mobilize resources, rally troops, and, stand strong against their enemies.
Now, we can't talk about an empire without talking about, its military. How did the Vijayanagara Empire do on that front? Who were their main rivals? What were some of their key conflicts?
Well, they had to have a strong military. I mean, constantly under threat from the north, right?
Right.
Their main rivals, that was the Bahmani Sultanate, another powerful force in the Deccan region, and their rivalry, intense. They clashed constantly over territory.
So like a constant power struggle.
Exactly, back and forth. And these conflicts, I mean, they were legendary. Big battles, shifting alliances. The Vijayanagara Empire always had to be ready, defend themselves, repel any incursions from the Bahmanis.
It's exhausting.
It was, but they were pretty good at it, at least for a good while.
So in the middle of all this political drama, military stuff, what was life like actually in the Vijayanagara Empire? Were they just focused on surviving, or did they manage to, build a thriving culture too?
They did more than survive, they thrived. The Vijayanagara Empire, it was known for its vibrant cultural scene. They were patrons of art, literature, architecture, created this unique blend of styles and traditions, drawing on all those diverse influences.
That's cool. So any specific examples, anything that gives us a sense of their art, their worldview?
Oh, tons. Take their architecture.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible builders, their temples and palaces, just breathtaking. We'll get into the specifics later, but picture huge towers, intricate carvings, the scale of it all. It really speaks to their ambition and artistry, powerful way to express their cultural identity.
Yeah, and to show off a bit too, right? Like, hey, look at us.
Exactly. And to help us understand how it all worked, the political and social structures, that held this vast empire together, we need to talk about a historian named Burton Stein.
Okay.
He's kind of a big deal when it comes to the Vijayanagara Empire.
So what are some of his key insights?
Well, he coined this term, segmentary state, to describe their system of governance. Basically, it means the empire wasn't this rigid top-down thing, more like a network of interconnected segments, each with a degree of autonomy.
So a balance between central authority and local control.
Nailed it. The emperors at Vijayanagara, they were masters of delegation, negotiation. They'd grant authority to regional chiefs, often from powerful local families, to maintain order, collect taxes, raise troops.
Smart. A little flexibility goes a long way, especially with an empire that big.
Exactly. It made administration more efficient, reduced the risk of rebellion. Stein's work really helps us understand how they created a system that was stable and adaptable. It wasn't perfect, obviously, but pretty effective for its time.
It's already a lot to think about. Strategic location, ambitious founders, unifying diverse groups, a unique system of governance. The Vijayanagara Empire's rise to power was definitely not simple.
And we haven't even touched on their military achievements, cultural stuff, or how it all eventually declined.
So much more to explore.
Okay, so we've kind of set the stage, right? Now let's zoom in a bit. How did this Vijayanagara Empire actually work? Their system, it was really complex and in a lot of ways pretty ahead of its time.
You mentioned Burton Stein,
Yeah.
right? And his segmentary state idea.
Yeah, that's the one.
So how did that actually play out, this balance between central authority and local autonomy?
Okay, imagine it like a network, all right? Different regions, they had some self-governance, but they still ultimately answered to the emperor, back in Vijayanagara.
Okay, makes sense.
The emperors, they were really good at delegating. They'd appoint these regional chiefs, often from powerful local families, to basically manage their own territories.
So kind of like mini rulers.
In a way, yeah. They'd collect taxes, keep things in order, even raise troops if they had to.
Interesting approach. Why do you think they did that? What was the advantage for the Vijayanagara rulers?
Well, think about it. Huge empire, right? Tons of different people, cultures. This system, it just made things way more efficient.
They didn't have to do everything themselves.
Exactly. And by working with those existing power structures, they were less likely to face rebellions.
Smart. So everyone's happy.
Well, mostly. It was two-way street.
Oh, right.
The chiefs, they got to keep their power, influence within their regions. The emperors rewarded them, land grants, fancy titles, some freedom to run things their own way.
Sounds pretty sweet.
It was, but they still had to show loyalty to the emperor, pay their taxes, provide troops when needed.
Right, so a balancing act.
For sure. The emperors, they had to be careful not give the chiefs too much power. They could become rivals.
Yeah, I can see that.
So they had ways to keep them in check, move them around to different regions so they couldn't build up too much of a base in one place. And, they weren't afraid to use force if a chief got out of line.
Okay, so there were limits.
Definitely. But it wasn't all just power plays and strategy. They also used culture and religion to strengthen their rule, you know.
Right.
They were masters of what we might call soft power. The Vijayanagara rulers, they were big patrons of temples, religious institutions, big festivals. They presented themselves as defenders of Dharma, the moral order.
So aligning themselves with the people's beliefs.
Exactly. Being seen as pious, just rulers, it reinforced their authority, built loyalty. People weren't just obeying out of fear. They actually believed the empire was good for them, spiritually, culturally.
Makes sense. But what about their relationships with other kingdoms? We've talked about the Bahmani Sultanate. Were there ever any, alliances.
Oh, yeah. They weren't just about fighting. The Vijayanagara rulers, they were pragmatic, knew when to fight, when to negotiate. They'd form alliances with smaller kingdoms, sometimes to counter the Bahmanis. They were good at, playing different factions off each other.
Skilled diplomats.
For sure. But, it's easy to get lost in the big picture, the emperors, the wars. What about the everyday people? How did the system actually affect them?
Yeah, good point.
Well, the sources we have, they suggest that life under the Vijayanagara Empire, it was mixed. On the one hand, you had stability, prosperity, created opportunities for a lot of people.
Yeah, that makes sense. Peace, trade, economic growth.
Right, more jobs, chances to improve your life, a sense of things moving forward.
Not bad.
Not bad at all. But, this was still a very hierarchical society, big inequalities. The caste system, that played a huge role in your life, what you could do, what opportunities you had.
Right. So even with the good times, social mobility was probably still pretty limited.
Yeah, it was, your caste. That really determined your fate. And even if you benefited from the economic boom, life wasn't always easy. Taxes were a burden, and there was always the threat of war, especially the Bahmanis.
That's mixed bag.
Yeah, exactly. Grandeur, cultural achievements, but also hardship, inequality.
Yeah.
History's never simple, right?
Never is.
Yeah.
Speaking of those cultural achievements, though, we have to talk about their architecture, those temples.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're just incredible.
They really are. Some of the most amazing examples of temple architecture anywhere in India. And these temples, they weren't just places of worship, they were statements. Power, cultural identity, works of art.
Right.
And they blended styles,
Yeah.
earlier South Indian traditions, but also influences from Islamic architecture. It created something totally unique, breathtaking.
So they weren't just copying, they were innovating.
Exactly. And they weren't afraid to experiment. Are there any specific temples, like must-sees, if you're visiting the region today?
Oh, for sure. The Virupaksha temple, dedicated to Shiva, it's iconic.
It's amazing. Courtyards, shrines, these pillared halls, and then this towering gopuram. It's like a giant carved gateway reaching for the sky.
I've seen pictures. The detail in those carvings, it's unbelievable.
It's mind-blowing. Scenes from Hindu mythology, so intricate, full of life. It's like stepping into another world. And that's just one example. There's the Hazara Rama temple with its beautiful friezes showing scenes from the Ramayana, and the Vitala temple complex with that iconic stone chariot.
Wow. They were really making a statement, weren't they?
They were. It's like they wanted to make their devotion, their power, their culture real, physical. And it's amazing to think those structures are still standing, after centuries.
They really are testaments to the Vijayanagara Empire's legacy.
They are. And it wasn't just temples. They also built palaces, waterworks, all sorts of public structures. They were showing off their skills, but also I think they were really invested in creating a thriving society.
So culture was a way to project power, but also to improve people's lives.
Exactly. And their patronage of the arts, it wasn't just about propaganda. They genuinely seemed to value beauty, creativity, knowledge. Poets, musicians, dancers, scholars, their court was a center for all of it.
Amazing how they created such a dynamic culture, especially of all the challenges they faced. It shows you, even with adversity, humans are capable of incredible things.
It's inspiring, right? Our ability to find beauty, meaning even when things are tough. But even the greatest empires, they don't last forever. And the Vijayanagara Empire, well, it was no exception.
True. No empire lasts forever. What happened? What led to their decline? And what was their lasting impact, on India?
Big questions. We'll have to save that for the next part of our deep dive, though.
I guess we will. I'm already hooked. Okay, so we're back, ready to explore the final chapter of the Vijayanagara Empire. It's a story of, we talked about the resilience, the revival, this cultural brilliance, but like all empires, eventually it faced its decline.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? No empire lasts forever.
Oh.
And for Vijayanagara, it was this combination of internal and external pressures that ultimately led to its downfall. We're talking 16th century.
So it wasn't like one single event that brought them down, more of a perfect storm kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. From the inside, you had those succession disputes, those classic power struggles, elites fighting for the throne.
Yeah, those can really mess things up, even for the most powerful empires.
Yeah.
Did those internal conflicts make them, more vulnerable to threats from outside?
Oh, absolutely. The Deccan Sultanates, remember them? Vijayanagara's longtime rivals? Well, they saw those internal weaknesses and they saw an opportunity.
And then they took it.
They did. Big time. And there's this one battle. It really changed
You're
everything.
talking about the Battle of Talikota, right? 1565.
That's the one. It was a crushing defeat for Vijayanagara.
I've heard about it. Wasn't their capital city, like, sacked and everything?
Yeah, it was brutal. The combined forces of the Deccan Sultanates, they just overwhelmed the Vijayanaga army. The capital, it was plundered, a real turning point. The empire's power, its prestige, it all took a major hit.
Wow, I can't even imagine. So it really felt like the end of an era.
Yeah, pretty much. But even in decline, the Vijayanagara Empire, it left a mark. Its influence, it continued to shape the region.
So what was their lasting impact? What made them so significant, even centuries after they were gone?
Well, first of all, they were key in reviving and sustaining this powerful Hindu state in a region that had been, facing more and more influence from the Islamic Delhi Sultanate.
Right.
They became this symbol of resistance, of cultural continuity, and that resonated with people.
Yeah, like they were saying, hey, we're still here. Our traditions, our beliefs, they matter.
Exactly. It was powerful, and it had a lasting impact. The Vijayanagara Empire, it showed that Hindu power, Hindu culture, it could not only survive, it could thrive.
And they did more than just resist, right? We talked about their cultural achievements, the art, the architecture.
Yeah, those temples.
Exactly. How did those contributions shape South India?
Their impact on art, architecture, it was huge. Their temples with those soaring gopurams, the intricate carvings, that grand scale, they became like the symbols of South Indian architecture.
Yeah.
The Vijayanaga style, it influenced temple construction for centuries. It's still there in the region's artistic heritage.
It's amazing how those structures have lasted. Reminders of the empire's, well, its grandeur and its vision.
Yeah, they're not just buildings, they're like repositories. History, culture, spirituality. They tell us about the Vijayanagara Empire's values, beliefs, their artistic sense, and they still inspire people today.
They do. So beyond the art, the architecture, did the Vijayanagara Empire also leave a mark on, social structures, religious practices?
Oh, for sure. One of the biggest things they did was, well, they fostered this sense of shared identity among all those different groups within the empire. They promoted a more inclusive kind of Hinduism, bringing in local traditions, beliefs, and that helped create unity, cohesion.
So it's about bringing people together, not forcing everyone into the same mold.
Exactly. And that was important for keeping the empire stable, and it had a lasting impact on religious practices in South India. It helped create this more diverse, tolerant religious landscape.
It shows you that even powerful empires can adapt, evolve. Sometimes the key to lasting is to embrace diversity, not try to erase it.
I think so. The Vijayanagara Empire's legacy, it's complicated. Triumphs, tragedies, innovations. It's a story about, well, empires rising and falling, the power of culture, and the resilience of us, humans.
It's been amazing, exploring the Vijayanagara Empire, the origins, the rise, the culture, the decline. We've covered so much.
And we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to learn about this period.
There always is. It's a good reminder that history is full of surprises, it's complex, and it shapes us even today.
It does.
So stay curious, keep exploring, keep diving deep.
Until next time.